refer to it as a pilgrimage in the book. Was it seen as a pilgrimage at the time?
When I talk about the pilgrimage in the book, I'm talking about what happened from around about 1985 onwards, which is when the doors were opened and people were able to travel from South Africa to Zambia, to Lusaka, to meet with the ANC. So the pilgrims weren't really the exiles. The pilgrims were the people like members of the UDF or representatives of churches, representatives of universities, who from about 1985 onwards, following the visit of the Anglo-American businessmen, people to Zambia to meet the ANC, somehow the doors opened. And from that time onwards, for a period of about 5 years, there was a steady flow of people from inside South Africa, leaders of various groups of civil society, going to meet with the ANC in Zambia. Those were the pilgrims, the people I think of as pilgrims.
Now, you were very closely associated with these people. What was your most memorable experience? When you were writing about it in the book, it really brought back memories, emotions, and feelings for you.
Very difficult to touch, to pick out any one experience. I think I was particularly moved by the funeral of Johnny McAteeny. I don't know whether you know who Johnny McAteeny was, but he was a long-serving member of the ANC in exile. He represented the ANC in America, the United Nations, and he became head of the sort of foreign affairs department. He died in Lusaka in about 1988, shortly before the end of exile. And by that time, the doors had somewhat opened to people who could come from South Africa to attend the funeral. So people like Frank Chikane, who was then leader of the South African Council of Churches, came and preached in the cathedral where the service was. And Dr. Bez Nadi, who you may have known, was another leader of the anti-apartheid movement, white Afrikaner, somebody who'd been a prominent member of the Dutch Reformed Church, but had parted company with the Reformed Church and become head of the Christian Institute that was banned. He was there, and when we went to the from the cathedral to the graveyard, I think it was Frank Chikane turned to Bez Nadi and said, "I'd like you to give the blessing." And then Bez Nadi stood down. It really sent a kind of a ripple through this crowd of mainly black people. He said, "I'm here, and if you don't mind, I'm going to give this blessing in my own language, in Afrikaans. And I'm going to do this in the hope that by using this language in this place, this language will be cleansed and will no longer be thought of as a language of oppression." And it was a very, very moving moment. It's the sort of thing that could bring tears to your eyes. But that's just one example.
I'm sure we can't speak about all of them.
No, that's an example of something which I thought was an extraordinarily moving experience. It's been written up. I mean, I think Eleanor Sisulu wrote about it. I refer to this in the concluding part of my, I think it's the chapter on the pilgrimage, actually. I think I end the chapter with that, because it was there are moments that are very, very moving. That was a moving moment.
In your opinion, did we speak enough about what happened during the Lusaka years today? And do we need to?
I think people speak too much about what happened in the exile years from a negative perspective. There's still a tendency for journalists and others to use exile as a kind of scapegoat. To
when
blame.
You say others, who do you mean?
Any commentators.
Okay.
I mean, political commentators, whatever. As I say, to blame anything they don't like about the ANC government on the exile experience. And to me, this is a lazy way of thinking, or a lazy way of talking. Exile ended more than 20 years ago.
Yeah.
There are actually, I think I counted, there are probably about 5 people in the South African government today who are actually in exile. President Zuma was in exile. Linda Sisulu was in exile. There are a few people. But to say that anything that's wrong with the way government performs today is the product or can be blamed on exile has always seemed to me to be quite wrong. So I think that people talk a bit too much about exile from a negative perspective. They don't talk about it enough from a sympathetic perspective.
Why do you think that is?
I don't know. I can't really explain why it is. I think people it's just an easy way out. It's an easy thing to say. You don't have to think very much. Oh, it's all exile. The culture of exile was bad. People brought back these bad things. I don't see that. It's not my view. I mean, I don't deny some bad things happen in exile, in the camps in Angola, for example. I'm not covering up that. We're not denying that, but that's part of exile. It wasn't the whole story of exile, and for most people, it was, people honestly struggling to achieve something. And the miracle, of course, is that the people who were in exile were able to come back in 1990 to combine with people who were inside, some of whom they'd been cooperating with for many years, and some of whom had been on this pilgrimage to this archive. It's not as if they didn't know the people, but they were able to combine to negotiate not an entirely peaceful, but a relatively peaceful transition to a new order, to a multi-party democracy in South Africa, and that was a miraculous thing in my view. And I don't think enough credit really is given to those people for that.